Modern identity. I'm happy, I'm not. Are we truly happy? You tell me. This is what we live today. And can we call it progress?
No.
There are people out there today who just can't seem to live in the real world anymore. Today's society is full of people trying to be noticed. That's what it really comes down to. In a world where everyone's trying to stand out, some people will go to any length just to be seen. Whether it's how they dress, how they talk, or what their cause may be that they're screaming about, it's all a performance. But here's the problem. While they want to be viewed as strong, independent adults, most people don't see them that way. Why? Because they live in a world of make-believe. They act like reality is negotiable, like facts are offensive, and they can't figure out why the rest of us don't take them seriously. The answer's simple. We live in the real world. They don't. What we're seeing more and more is people who aren't just different. They're oppositional by default. They have to go against the grain. They don't just want freedom, they want control. Control over how we speak, how we think, how we feel. There's actually a psychological term for this kind of behavior, and it's called oppositional defiant disorder, which is ODD. And while we're not out here diagnosing anybody, let's be honest, when someone's entire identity is built around fighting structure and rejecting basic truth, it starts to look a lot like that, okay? They change the rules constantly. What was true yesterday isn't allowed today. They expect full respect and validation from everyone else, but give none back. You're expected to walk on eggshells around them, but they trample over your values without hesitation. They say that they want acceptance, but what they truly want is control. And the irony is, if they truly wanted to stand out, they'd be better off just being decent. In today's overstimulated, performative world, the person who shows kindness, patience, and emotional maturity is the one who actually stands out. Instead, we get tantrums dressed up as progress. We get moral theater instead of responsibility. We get rebellion for the sake of rebellion, and then there's the cold biological truth that nobody wants to hear. If you put 100 men and women on an island, within 100 years, you'd see production. You'd see life. However, if you put 100 men on an island, or 100 women, it's over. You have nothing but bones. There's no continuation, okay? Regardless of what someone feels or identifies as. The truth is, we are still biological creatures. Reality does not bend to ideology. Hello. The moral of the story is this. You can fight against reality all you want, but in the end, reality wins. You can't shout down nature. You can't cancel biology. If you want to be taken more seriously, then live seriously. Many younger people want to be seen as adults, but if one still constantly lives in the land of make-believe, that in respect is considered childish. Respect doesn't come from something that you demand. It's something you earn. The average folk are no longer pretending because they too have a voice. Bingo! Histrionic personality traits. Here's another one. The next group. These people often crave being the center of attention and will do or say whatever it takes to stay there, including exaggeration, drama, and shifting alliances. People with histrionic personality traits often need to be the center of attention at all times. They do it through exaggeration, dramatic stories, and constant self-reference. Look what I did. Look what happened to me. I'm the star of every conversation. When the attention shifts away from them or when they feel threatened by someone else in the room, they'll redirect it with jabs, jokes, or snide comments. It's passive aggressive, but under the surface, it's about reasserting control of the emotional spotlight. Instead of addressing issues directly, they perform for the room. They'll make someone the punchline to subtly belittle them without technically starting an argument. That way, they can play it off. Oh, come on. It was just a joke. While everyone else feels the sting of it. That tactic is often called social undermining or covert hostility. And when combined with a need to dominate attention, it definitely leans into histrionic behavior. Often, at times, these individuals are also the ones who try to present themselves as the good ones. The peacemakers, the enlightened, emotionally involved, morally superior figures. On the surface, they appear calm, kind, and concerned, but underneath, it's all performance. These are the people who talk about others behind their backs while smiling to their faces. They act one way in front of you and another way behind you. And here's the truth. Whether people want to hear it or not, if someone comes to you constantly talking about other people, tearing them down, whispering judgment, rest assured, they're doing the same thing to you when you're not around. So in other words, while you're made to feel wonderful, think again. Even if they make you feel like you're special, like you're the one person they confide in, remember, and remember this well, they're making someone else feel like that too. That same mouth that praises you today will be used to criticize you tomorrow, depending on who's in the room and what attention they're trying to grab. It's not honesty. It's social manipulation. It is called covert. It's a game of emotional control, and the ones who play it are never truly loyal to anyone, including themselves. They don't stand for anything. They just shift to match whatever will make them feel most important in the moment. Next group, obsessive relational intrusion folk. They are the ones who linger in the background. Those who no longer have a place in your life or never did, but continue trying to insert themselves through observation, gossip, and control. They don't reach out directly, not always. They don't make themselves known, but they're always watching, always listening, always asking about you through others. They stalk social media, and it often becomes their tool of choice, not for connection, but for surveillance. They don't move on because they can't. The reason is simple. They have no life of their own. Your existence becomes their fixation. Your actions give them something to talk about, something to feel superior to, something to cling to. This isn't curiosity, it's obsession. Clinically, it's a pattern known as obsessive relational intrusion. These individuals find meaning in staying tethered to people they should have already let go of or should have never been involved with. It is not a far cry from celebrity stalking. They monitor your pages, your comments, your friendships, not because they care, but because detaching would mean facing their own emotional emptiness. They live off borrowed energy. That's why you hear your name come out of their mouths long after the relationship has ended. That's why they reach through mutual friends to stir things up. Their sense of identity is fused to what you're doing, and they don't know how to stand on their own without it. While they pretend they've moved on, claiming indifference or even superiority, their behavior betrays them. If someone has truly let go, they don't follow anyone's digital shadow, and they don't have others do it for them. They don't make you the topic of every conversation. They don't reduce themselves to whisper campaigns and passive monitoring. What you're seeing isn't confidence. It's dependence in disguise. These individuals don't stalk because they care. They stalk because they have nothing else in their lives. Next group. These individuals operate through a psychological lens built entirely around avoidance. At the core is externalization, a defense mechanism where blame is projected onto everyone but themselves. They lack the capacity or the willingness to look inward, because doing so would unravel the fragile identity they've built. Layered on top is rigid cognition, which blocks them from accepting any version of reality that contradicts their self-image. Facts are ignored or twisted, and challenges to their behavior are seen as personal attacks rather than opportunities for growth. Many of them lie compulsively, not always with malicious intent, but through a pattern known as pseudologia fantastica, a habitual need to distort truth to protect their ego. Over time, these distortions become their lived reality, supported by delusional style defense mechanisms that allow them to fully believe their own rewrites of history. They are not grounded in truth. They are anchored in survival, emotional, social, and psychological, and they will sacrifice trust, relationships, and credibility to maintain that illusion. These are the same people who could get pulled over doing 20 miles over the limit and still manage to convince themselves they've been wronged. It doesn't matter that they were speeding. It doesn't matter that they knew it. The officer's the problem. The law is the problem. The weather, the traffic, the speedometer, anything but them. It's not about justice. It's about evading responsibility, because for them, admitting fault isn't just uncomfortable, it's impossible. They don't see consequences as lessons. They see them as insults. They interpret correction as persecution. That's the kind of thinking that keeps people stuck in their whole lives, never evolving, never adjusting, always explaining away the fallout of their own choices with a new round of excuses. When they hit the wall, as they always do, it's never because they were driving toward it. It's because someone else built the wall too close that they suffer from. Clinically, it falls under psychological denial. This is the core of defense mechanism. The person literally refuses to accept facts that threaten their self-image. Denial isn't lying, it's the mind protecting itself from shame or loss of control. Fragile ego structure. When denial is chronic and paired with an inability to handle criticisms, clinicians describe the personality organization as fragile. The person must keep their self-esteem inflated so every bit of feedback feels like an attack. They deflect, project, or gaslight instead of reflecting. Egocentric thinking. That means their behaviors feel right or justified to them. Even if their actions are clearly destructive, they experience no internal conflict, so they can't recognize the problem. Then you've got cognitive rigidity. Some psychologists simply call it rigid cognition. The person's thinking can't adapt to new information. Everything filters through their preset narrative, which keeps them from learning or even changing. Often, you will see these folks with pathological lying issues. These people who constantly shift blame, deny obvious reality, and refuse accountability often do lie repeatedly. But it's not always about telling dramatic, bold lies. It's more insidious. They twist the truth just enough to avoid blame, look good, yet they will still outright lie also. And here's where it really starts to come apart. The lying, that is. Because when someone can't face reality and they can't accept responsibility, the next thing they do is rewrite the truth. Not once, not twice, habitually. We're not talking about the occasional white lie. We're talking about chronic lying. The clinical term is pseudologia fantastica, a compulsive need to invent, exaggerate, or distort the facts, even when there's no benefit. It's not always malicious. Sometimes it's just habitual self-preservation. They lie because the truth threatens the image they've built of themselves. The psychology behind it goes even deeper. It's called externalization, a mental pattern where nothing is ever their fault. Every mistake is someone else's doing. Every failure has an external cause. The truth is filtered through ego protection, not self-reflection. These individuals don't internalize blame, they project it. I pair it with rigid cognition, the inability to adapt their thinking when confronted with new or contradictory information, and you've got someone who will rewrite history in real time just to avoid discomfort. The emotional immaturity behind this is staggering. They can't handle being wrong, even in the smallest situations. They can't take correction. They can't sit in discomfort long enough to grow. So, instead, they default to delusional style defense mechanisms. They tell the lie so often that eventually they believe it. It becomes the version of truth that allows them to function without ever taking a hard look in the mirror. They will swear up and down that they were never speeding, that they never said what they said, that they never hurt anyone, and when the consequences show up, they act shocked, betrayed, victimized, because in their mind, they're not the one who created the mess. They're the one being unfairly punished for it. So clinically, they often suffer from what people call chronic lying, which is often too much. This too falls under pseudologia phantastica, or pathological lying. Delusional style defense mechanisms aren't full psychosis, but they are layers of self-deception. These people lie so much they often start believing their own revision of events, and that's not confidence, it's psychological fragility in disguise. Next group. Here we land where all of this behavior seems to be heading. The identity of the victim. In today's culture, we're seeing more and more people introduce themselves not by their values, not by their accomplishments, not even by their character, but by their conditions. Hi, I'm so-and-so. I have this problem. That's it. That's the headline for today. They walk into the world expecting recognition, not for what they've done, but for what's wrong with them. They lead with pain as if it earns automatic respect. They define themselves by dysfunction and then demand that the world applaud them for it. What they don't realize is that true respect doesn't come from your struggles. It comes from how you carry them. You hear that? It comes from how you carry them. Everyone's going through something. Everyone has baggage. But being wounded isn't the same as being wise, and suffering alone doesn't make you strong. What you do with it, that's where strength is built. That's where character is forged. That part takes work. It takes silence. It takes humility. And this culture doesn't reward that anymore. It rewards loudness, victimhood, constant declarations of what's broken without ever asking, what are you doing to fix it? So the cycle continues. Validation without accountability. Identity without depth. Performance without substance. Next group, the truth seeker. Some people walk through life with their guard up before a word is ever spoken. They don't trust easily, not because the people in front of them have done something wrong, but because someone in the past already did, and now everyone else is measured through that lens. What others see as distance or coldness is actually a survival mechanism. These are the people who don't miss a trick. They don't miss a beat. They're hyper-aware, always watching and always scanning. They pick up on tone changes, word choices, facial tension, the pace of someone's breathing, things most people overlook. That kind of sharpness is born from self-preservation. When you've been lied to, gaslit, or manipulated enough times, you stop listening to words and start reading patterns. These individuals are not easy to fool, and they're not the kind of people you can lie to. They'll see right through it, sometimes before you even realize you're doing it. But that awareness, as sharp as it is, can also become a curse. Even in calm, safe situations, they are still on edge. They can't shut it off. They're not always responding to the present. They're reacting to the past as well. And while that instinct has protected them more than once, it's also isolated them. Once a person has lied to them, they will never trust them. Basically, until the issue is acknowledged and worked through, Trust will always feel dangerous, and connection will always feel like a risk they're not sure they can take. Next group. They are the people who show up smiling every day at first glance. You'd think they have it all figured out. They laugh easily, speak brightly, and carry themselves like they don't have a care in the world. They're the ones checking in on others, spreading positivity, cracking jokes. But the truth is, that constant happiness is often a cover. It's a script. They've learned to perform so well that even they start to believe it. Many of them grew up in environments where showing pain wasn't safe, or where being strong meant never breaking down. So, they learned to mask, to smile instead of speak, to redirect instead of confront. Their positivity isn't always rooted in joy. It's rooted in emotional survival. The irony is, they're often the ones carrying the most. But because they seem so fine, nobody asks. Nobody even checks in. And over time, they start to feel invisible inside of their own performance. Not every cheerful person is hiding pain, but many are. And it's worth remembering that sometimes the loudest laugh is covering the deepest ache. They maintain jobs, relationships, and social obligations while privately suffering. They may even convince themselves they're fine because they function so well. They also have high-functioning depression, also not a formal diagnosis, but often used to describe people with persistent depressive disorder, dysthymia, who keep up appearances and responsibilities while feeling chronically low, disconnected, or empty underneath. They also suffer from emotional suppression, emotional masking. Clinically, this is a defense mechanism. These individuals actively suppress their real emotions to maintain control, avoid vulnerability, or keep from being perceived as weak. Over time, this can lead to emotional fatigue, resentment, and psychological burnout. In some cases, alexithymia, while not the norm for all, some of these individuals may experience difficulty identifying or expressing their own emotion, leading to a polished surface-level emotional presentation that feels off to others. In a world, especially, where everyone is classified, labeled, or pathologized, it's easy to forget that no one is immune. We've all developed defense mechanisms, whether it's emotional suppression, overcompensation, hypervigilance, or avoidance. Some people externalize, others internalize. Some perform strength while quietly unraveling. On a sad note, no one moves through life untouched. We've all formed patterns in response to pain, rejection, or instability. And yes, that includes me. I don't speak from a pedestal. I speak from the same flawed, scarred human space as everyone else does. I have my own edges, my own habits, and my own unresolved wiring. We all do. I just happen to find psychology quite interesting and often read about it. The difference isn't in who has the most damage. It's in who's willing to look at it honestly. Growth doesn't come from perfection. It comes from awareness. In the end, it's the real line that separates people. Not who's broken, not who's not, but who's still running from themselves and who finally stopped. In a world where everyone is classified, labeled, or pathologized, it's easy to forget no one is immune. So as I've said, growth doesn't come from perfection. It comes from awareness. And more than anything, it comes from knowing how to truly listen. Not just hearing someone so you can respond, but listening so you can understand. The world doesn't need more people performing their pain or pretending they're above it. What it needs is people willing to show up, not over the top, not invisible, just real, truthful. When we show up as ourselves, not as a brand, a mask, or a reaction to everything, the world runs smoother, conversations soften, judgment slows down, and we stop tearing each other apart just to be heard. So where do you fit in? So are we truly happy? We can be.